It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and I'm going to cover something really useful for your business today. Now, we've been talking a lot about open source in the business and the workplace, but one of the things that you're going to want is a way to support your users. Now, I've shown you all kinds of really great software over the last few years, and some amazing open source software is out there. I'm going to name a few. Mesh Central, absolutely incredible for remote machine management. RPort, an incredible tool for remote machine management. You've got Remotely, which we're going to talk about today for doing remote support is really what I look at it as, but you could also do remote machine management with it. And then you've got Rustdesk, which I've covered in the last few months as well, which is another just incredible open source tool. The reason I want to come back to these is I think that they're very important, and it's important to keep up with what's going on with these open source projects. So Remotely started with a developer who wanted to kind of solve a problem, and he really made a really awesome tool. And as it grew, he just worked on it part-time. He had a full-time job, he had a family, and really, like I say, when people start dedicating their time to these open source projects and they start really growing, I'm not always sure that they understand how much of a commitment that is. But we also have to be understanding that they have lives and they have other things going on. Just like I have a full-time job, I also have a side gig doing IT. I have my family. I have a lot going on besides making these videos. So it really takes a lot of intention for me to sit down and get to making a video for you guys. So when we talk about business, I want to talk about these tools because these tools are so useful and so powerful. They were really great before. But now with people being more work from home or work remote or work from all different locations, but really we still have to work together and coordinate. When you're trying to support those people, it becomes really, really important to have great tools to be able to do that. So I'm going to cover all of these tools that I just talked about, and it's all going to be in this Building a Business series, but really these are some incredible tools that if you put them all together, give you some awesome capabilities as well and a lot of redundancy, which I really like. So we're going to talk about what's happened with Remotely over the last couple of years real quick, and then we'll get into the installation and kind of look at how it works and what you can do with it. This was originally under another GitHub account called Translucency, and the guy that was making it was just awesome. And they have some history down here if you want to read it, but I'll kind of tell you about it. So he was awesome. There's a separate company called Immense that was making a product called Imibot, I believe. And really, the whole idea was that it was going to be an MSP tool for automation and things like that. And they really started growing. And after Remotely was announced over on Reddit, on the MSP Reddit, they started watching the project and keeping an eye on it. And they saw it grow and really turning into something great. And eventually, they kind of started talking with the guy who started Remotely and said, "Hey, we think we're on the same track. We'd like to take over this project. We know you don't have a lot of time to work on it." And he really liked what they were trying to do and felt like they were in alignment, and they agreed to keep it open source, which is amazing. I would like to point out that this company is keeping this open source, so if you're looking for MSP tools to help with automation and stuff, you might go check out what they've got on the pay software side because, again, as they make money, they can afford to continue putting efforts into Remotely and keeping it open source for people. I think that's awesome. But you can see here, this was a May 22 status update where they were kind of talking about it. You can kind of see what the Remotely interface looks like if you've never seen it on my videos before. But they've got a couple of ways that you can run it. Really what they want you to do these days is run it with Docker, which is great because this is almost exactly what I showed in one of my previous videos. Makes it super easy to kind of get everything up and running. So this is the way we're going to do it today. And we're going to get into the installation and how it all works right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up. And that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. Getting into the installation isn't hard, but since we're doing this as part of our series on building a business on open source, we created our Proxmox server. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to right click up here and I'm going to create a new CT, a new LXC container. So I'm just going to click on Create CT. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to give it a name remotely. Now, you don't have to do this. If you have Docker set up on a VM, you can absolutely just run this in the Docker you have set up, I imagine. But in order to kind of run you guys through these processes a few times, I want to show you how to do this. And really, LXC containers are super lightweight usage, which is awesome. So I'm going to call this just remotely. And I'm going to give this a password for my login here. And I'm going to confirm it. And we should be good. We're going to hit next. So right here it says, where do you want to get the image from? Well, I have mine in a place called CT Images. Yours might be in local, so kind of check, see where you see them. But hopefully you've got some images in there that you can use. I'm going to use this most recent Ubuntu 22.04. That's perfectly good. Now the next thing it says is, where do you want to put it? So I'm just going to pick one of my VMs. I've got VM clones that has some space there. And we'll just set this at 64 gigs. It probably could be a lot smaller, but that seems fine to me. Next thing we want to set up our cores. So I'm going to set this with 4 cores. It probably doesn't need it. In fact, let's just do 2 cores. 2 cores ought to be plenty. On the RAM, let's just set this to, I don't know, something fairly small. Let's do 2048, so 2 gigs, and then 2 gigs of swap. And then on the network, now it's up to you if you want to set this on a static address, if you want to set this to a VLAN, if you want to set this to anything, completely up to you. For me, I'm just going to use DHCP for now, just because I have so many devices on my network right now. I don't have them all mapped out, and I don't know what open device network IDs there are, so IPs. So I'm just going to use DHCP, let it pull one, then I'll come back and set this to static afterwards. So I'm going to just hit next. And finally, DNS. If you have special DNS you want to use, go ahead and fill that in. If not, just leave it blank and it'll pull whatever your router or your firewall is giving it. And then finally, we're going to check everything, make sure it looks good, and we're going to hit finish. It'll just take a few, 30 seconds, 40 seconds for that to finish creating, if that long, and then we'll close it and we'll boot it up. There you go. It didn't even take that long. It took like 10 seconds, so that's awesome. So we're going to go over here and find that LXC container we just created. We're going to right-click on it. We're going to say Start. You want to have it highlighted, and then you're just going to hit on the console there. Once it boots up, we're going to use root as our login initially. And there we go. All right, so I am going to see if I can SSH into this thing. I don't know if you can SSH in as root. For some reason, I feel like I can't sometimes, but let's find out. Let's first get our IP. So we're going to do IP-BR-CA. And this pulled the IP of 83, so we can go fix that IP address real quick too, actually. So we'll go to network. We'll double-click. We'll say we're going to set that static now. We're going to do the same thing, 192.168.10.83, and then you need to put /24, and then I'll put in my gateway address, 10.1, and I'll hit OK. And I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to reboot this machine real quick. And these things reboot really fast, which is awesome. So you'll see it went down, and it should come back up here within about 10-15 seconds. Yeah, there we go. I don't know, it wasn't refreshing on the screen there, sorry. But it only took a few seconds, so we'll go back in as root. What we're going to do is we're going to fix that problem. And I don't know if I can make this much larger, but I'll try. So I'm going to do add user Brian. And I'll give it a password for me. So we're going to add a non-root user just because that's a little bit more secure. And then we're going to do user mod dash little a capital G sudo and then Brian. So I'm adding myself to the sudo users group, and that should be all we need. I'm going to do exit, which is going to log out. I'm just going to make sure I can log in with my new user. Yes, and I'm going to do sudo cat /etc/ resolve-conf, and it's going to ask me for my super user password, and it worked. Awesome. Okay, we're good. So we can do log out there. Now let's see if we can log back in through our terminal. There we go, we are in. Awesome. So what we'll do is an apt update. Always update and upgrade whenever you create a new system, just to make sure everything is up to date. It usually only takes a few minutes if everything's pretty close, so definitely do that. It's worth your time. Alright, that whole update process probably took like 2 minutes, so it didn't take very long at all. And we're just going to reboot real quick. And seriously, like an LXC just takes like 15 seconds to reboot. It's crazy fast, so it's awesome. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to add Docker to our system. Now, you can just use Docker IO if you want to. I like Docker CE better myself, but it's completely up to you. If you just want to use the apt version of Docker, sudo apt install, oh, maybe it's .io. Yeah, so it's .io, so this is going to install docker.io. We'll see what version we get with it. 20.10.12, that's not bad. So, okay, cool. So we've got Docker installed. Now we need to get our Docker run command. So if we go back to the browser, we can jump back over here and we can look right here. So they first say, let's make a directory. That's fine. We'll follow their instructions to the letter here. So we're going to do that. And I can't, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it with sudo. There we go. So we should have that directory. And then we're going to do the Docker install command here, the Docker run command. So we're going to go over here and we're going to do control copy, and we will flip back to here, and let's just make sure we like everything the way it's set. var data remotely data, and this all looks okay. It's going to pull down the latest one, and it's going to map port 5000 to port 5000. Now, the one thing you might want to check is if you're using a machine that's already set up, if you have something already using 5000 on the left side of that port mapping, you'll want to change this to some other number. Leave the right side alone, but the left side you can change. So it looks good. So this gives us an issue because we're not in the Docker group. So what we can do is we can say sudo user mod, which means change this user, modify this user. We're going to say -a and then capital G. So we're going to add this user to the group, and we're going to say the group is Docker and the name of the user you want to add. So in my case, Brian. In your case, you would use your own name. So we're now added to that group. The next thing we want to do is newgrp and then newgrp Docker. There we go. We should now be able to do that. Let's do Docker PS. There we go. It's a good test. So we'll go back up and see if we can get that Docker command back. No, it didn't like it for some reason. Okay, so we'll paste it in. We've got the Docker run command again. Double check, make sure if you made any changes, you make those changes again. And we're going to hit enter, and that should pull down the image. All right, so it says that it should be up. If we do Docker PS, it shows that it's up and that 5000 and 5000 are set. So let's just go and test. 83, and we're going to go to port 5000. All right, so we've got remotely. That's awesome. We've got the registration card right here, so that's great. We're getting there. Now, I want to have this exposed from the outside world, but if you don't, if you just need it on your internal network, the IP address is probably fine. You could set up an actual FQDN inside of your network, so it could be, you know, some kind of thing .loc for loc or whatever you want, and reach it that way and have your clients reaching it that way. As long as they're in your network and can get to it, that's great. But if you want to do this from the outside, you need to do something like Nginx Proxy Manager, which I already have running on my network. So we're going to go log into that guy, and we're going to add a new proxy host here, and I'm going to call this remotely.routemehome.org. Now, again, I own the domain routemehome.org. So I have an A record pointing routemehome.org to my home IP address, and then I forward that through so that any request for anything.routemehome.org goes to Nginx Proxy Manager. Nginx Proxy Manager then gets that request and handles it and figures out where do I need to send you. So I'm going to hit tab to make that turn into a little chip. For the IP address, I'm going to put 192.168.10.83. And here I'm going to put port 5000. I'm going to say block common exploits. I'm going to say WebSocket support. And I'm just going to save. And let's just make sure that that will get me to the page. So let's just go to remotely.routemehome.org. You would, of course, use your own domain name. So it didn't. Oh, I put a T in front. That's why. If you spell things correctly, it may work. How about now? There we go. So there's my remotely. I'm getting to it, but it's not encrypted yet. So let's go back to Nginx Proxy Manager. Let's find our entry. We'll edit it, and we'll jump to the SSL tab. We're going to say, give me a new certificate, please. We're going to say force SSL, HTTP2 support, and make sure our email's filled in, and then accept the terms of service, and we'll click save. Now sometimes when I click save, I get a little pink bar up here with no words in it. It's kind of weird, but if I just click save again, then it goes through. Sometimes it just works, so we'll see. Alright, it just went away, which means we should now be able to get to it on the HTTPS. So let's just try to go to it again. There it is. Now we've got a actual verified certificate, and we're getting here encrypted, and it just redirects us automatically to 443, which is awesome. So the next thing we want to do is we want to register on the site and start setting things up. When you first install remotely and you come to the website for the first time, whether you do it through the encrypted process or just straight to the IP, you're going to see these two buttons, and you want to click on the register button. The first user that you register becomes the admin of the site, and it creates the site organization the first time. So I'm going to put in my email address, and I can hit save if I want to, but right now I don't need to. So here we've got everything kind of up and set and ready. We have no machines, no notifications, nothing like that set up yet. So what we want to do is we want to go to account. It's going to bring us to our account settings. So here we can put in our phone number. We can check our email information, change our password, and then here we've got two-factor authentication. Now this is very, very important. So add the Authenticator app. You get this nice little URL thing, this little box. So it's going to give me a code. So I want to type in that code right here and make sure that it's valid. So it's 373834. Hit verify. Verifies a little bit below the footer there. Gives you recovery codes. These are very important. So you should copy these things and store them somewhere safe, like inside of your Vault Warden entry there. So make sure you sync things just to get everything set back up. Again, personal data, you can come in here and set that up. You can download it or delete it. So for the people looking at GDPR, you do have the ability to do that. Let's go back to our remotely page. So organization. This is where you can start defining your organization information. So the organization gets an ID, but you can create an organization name. So I could call this Fixit Del Rio. Default organization for the server. And then I can start creating device groups. So if I want to create device groups, add a new device group. So it's a little bit weird out of order here, but let's just call this client A. Whatever your client A's name would be, and then add. And then we'll call this client B and client 3. We've got myself as a user, so you can delete this user, you can edit this user's permissions, you can make them not an administrator, and then you can invite users. Now you need to set up some things in order to do invites. So we're going to go to server configuration. So you see I'm a server admin. You see there's application settings. So allow API login, just depends if you want to put banned devices. Data retention in days is 90 days by default. You can change that. And then the database provider is SQLite. You can change that as well if you want to. So you can say enable Windows event log, enforce attended access. So that means that someone has to be there to allow you onto the machine. If there's any known proxies, you can set those up as well. So you can add a known proxy, it'll show up in the box. Max organization count. So this is where it sets it. So right now, we've set up our organization, Fixit Del Rio. It's the only organization that can be put in here because it was set to 1. Now if we say, you know what, we need 3 other organizations. So maybe you're not going to be like an organization for your clients, but maybe you're using this internally and you want to say, you know what, I want to set up an organization for development and an organization for support and an organization for payroll and an organization for HR. Then you could do that as well. So you want to set up how many organizations you want. Now, if you don't want to limit the number of organizations, you just set this to -1 and it will have unlimited organizations. You can add as many as you want. Then you can assign users to those organizations and devices to those organizations as well, so that it keeps things nice and separated, and you can have certain users who have access to certain things. Message of the day. If you want to put in a message of the day, you can do that. Redirect HTTPS is checked. So it tries to do that, but you saw it didn't do that when we went to the IP, so that was interesting. Remote control, notify the user. You should leave this checked. I think it's kind of creepy to try to take control of somebody's computer and not let them know. That's just my personal opinion. Require authentication on remote control page. I think that should be also a thing. Remote control session limit. You can set that to how many sessions you want to have simultaneously. This is going to depend on some of your server beefiness and your bandwidth as well, so kind of keep that in mind. You can't just set this to 3,000 and go crazy with a tiny little server like we set up. Require two-factor authentication. So if you want your users to have to use two-factor authentication, you would check this box and it would make them have to set it up. SMTP display name, SMTP email. This is where you set up all of your email information. SMTP port. So you can set all these things up, or SMTP host, SMTP port. And then check certificate. You can do all these things. Local domain. So you can set up all the stuff for your email right here. So dark theme or light theme. Completely up to you, but when you save, it's going to change. So I like dark themes just because it feels better on my eyes. CORS origins if you need those. Add trusted URLs. You can do that as well. Use HSTS. Use HTTP logging. Connection strings if you need those things. So you've got a lot of information here that you can do. So I'm going to hit save. I've made no changes, I think. Maybe one. But there we go. So we've set that all up, which is great. So you can check your server logs to kind of see what's been going on. So you do have an audit trail here, which is really great. Super, super great for business when you're trying to run something as a business and keep an eye on what's going on. And then you've got these other options. So you've got home, and then you've got this remote control page. So you notice it opens it in another tab, which is great. But it says, your name, short, send it to clients. So you could just type instead of your email, Brian. And then the session ID. They give you a session ID basically based on what your system has. So I'm going to open up another window here. Imagine, if you will, that this is not running on a machine that I have access to all the time. That this is running on somebody's machine in my organization or on a client's machine out in the world. So depending on what you're trying to do, you have some options. So your client calls in and says, "Oh, I'm having a really rough day. I need your help." You can see I've got Rustdesk already, so I could do that, but let's just pretend that I don't. So I'm going to go to Edge here. I'm going to tell them, okay, open up your browser, and I'm going to have you go to remotely.routemehome.org. If you set up everything correctly where they can reach that, depending on where they're coming from, they're going to say, "Oh, do I need to register?" And you just tell them, no, you don't. On the left, see downloads? Just click downloads. And there, I need you to click on the download underneath Windows 64-bit. Now, if you're supporting Linux 64-bit, you would tell them to pull this one. We're going to say Windows 64-bit. They're going to say, "Okay, I see it. It's downloading." Now, they may tell you, "Oh, I'm getting this message, so I want you to look up here in the corner." This thing saying, "Hey, the remotely developer isn't signed by Microsoft." That's just Microsoft being jerks. I mean, they're trying to protect you, I guess, but you can tell the person, "Okay, I'm going to have you click on the three dots. Just click on Keep. And then you're going to click on the arrow next to Show More. And you're going to click on Keep Anyway." Alright, does it look like it's finished downloading? Yes, it does. Okay, we're going to click on Remotely. And you'll see it pop up and it's going to say, "Windows tried to protect you." I need you to click on the link that says More Info. And then click on Run Anyway. You can close your browser now. If they don't do all that stuff, you can just tell them, go to Downloads, and you're going to click on Remotely Desktop. And you should see a small window pop up in the corner. Click on the little gear icon. If you get any pop-ups, just click them away. We're going to click on the little gear icon. We're going to say Change Server. And we want to change that to HTTPS. You see where it says HTTP? Just type an S after HTTP and then click on OK. Now you should see an ID there. I'm going to need you to give me that ID. So in our case, the ID is 914-316-264. So you type that in, you're going to hit Connect. And it says Requesting Access. So we're going to go look at it, and you'll see it pops up something on their screen. It says, "You received a connection request from Brian. Do you want to accept?" They'll click Yes. And I'll go back here, and now you see that I'm looking at their system. So I'm going to switch back and forth between these tabs. There's Proxmox. Here's Remotely. Now Remotely has this nice little set of tools over here on the left as well, so don't miss out on that. because they've got this box open. I'm set. Okay, I'm on their system. I can start doing the things I need to do. I can click on the start button. I can start typing. I can say, let's check for updates before we do anything else and make sure there's nothing missing. We'll let Windows Update run. Look at that. There's updates ready, okay? So we can say install now. It's going to start running the updates, and we can do all kinds of great things. Now, we've done this. Great. We've got the person on the line. They're set. So I'm going to close this for now, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm done. I appreciate it. Everything should be working. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click on disconnect. Disconnects me, brings me back to the page where I can type in another client ID. Now you might be saying, wow, that's cool, but what if I want to access the machine when there's nobody there? So there's also options for that. So if we go look back under downloads, whenever you're logged in, you have these things called resident agents. So until you're logged in, you won't see this lower section. You'll only see this lower section once you're logged in. But here we can say Windows 10 and 11, 64-bit and 32-bit. Right here's the Windows installer. Here's the x64 files only, x86 files only. But right here is the installer. So we can actually set this up on machines that we have access to. So if we go back over here and we say, okay, well, let's go set that up. So what we need to do is log in. Kind of up to you how you get these files back and forth across, anything like that. But what you're going to have to do is actually log in, and then you'll get access to this machine. There we go. But you're going to have to either log in or download the files and put them on the machine in some other way. It's kind of up to you how you do that, but we're going to log in. So now that I'm logged in, I can go to the downloads page, and again, I can see these things. So I can click on this to download it. And again, it's going to give me this message. I just click on the three things and say keep, and then it's like, are you really sure? Keep. It'll finish downloading, but we'll click it here. Make sure we get the right one. Again, it's going to tell you, I tried to protect you. We appreciate it, I guess. So keep and run it anyways. Yes, I want to run it. So you'll have the organization ID. You have the support shortcut. So if you have multiple organizations, you may want to change this organization ID. I don't right now, so it's fine. So when I first ran this, I did it with HTTP. Don't forget to do HTTPS. So let's uninstall it. And then let's make sure we've got HTTPS in there, and let's do install. Let's go see if we see, and there's our machine. So our machine now just shows up on our desktop, which is great. We don't have to actually have someone tell us, hey, I want you to come log in. It's going to show you a lot of information, which is really great. So you can see like what's going on, what's it using. You've got actions, so you can chat. You can remote control. You can do view only so that the user can just show you what's going on if you want them to do that. You can upload a file to that machine. And of course, you could uninstall the agent. You send a message and it'll uninstall the agent from their machine. So pretty cool that you can do all that stuff in a remote way. You've got some information about this machine. You can make notes. You can create tags. Tons of stuff that you can do here, which is really cool. So we're going to say, let's remote control it, because that's the point. There we go. Took just a second. It did open up another tab, and there we go. We're back on. We're remote controlling the machine. It tells the user, hey, somebody's taking over for remote control, which is pretty great. And then, of course, we can go and take our actions like we need to. So pretty awesome that we can do this kind of stuff. And it's all through the web browser, which is even better. So one more feature is you've got this terminal here at the bottom. You can actually create some scripts. You can add some commands to do things, but you've got PowerShell Core, you've got WinPowerShell, Bash, and then the command line. So it kind of just depends on what you want to do. But let's just see if we can do ipconfig. And we'll pick that to be the command line. And if we hit enter, there we go. So we get the information back from that machine that I'm connected to. 192.168.10.109. What you want to do is check the box of the machine that you want to run that command against, and then put in the command. Now the other part is there's some branding options. So for the client that people go and download from your page, you've got the option to change what these things say. So right now it says remote control product name. Up to you. Do you want to call it something else? You can. You can put here Fix It Del Rio. And then do you have a different icon? So right here's the icon. This is what it's talking about. So you could browse and put an icon. Now, it may have specific sizes that you need to use, so kind of be aware of that. But then colors. Do you like the colors that it's using? I think these are okay. Kind of cool that you can actually go and do a little bit of white labeling with this as well. A very, very awesome tool. Now, walking somebody through going and getting the application and running the application is not hard. I've done it in the past, and it was just absolutely easy. Had no problem getting them to do those things. Had no problem getting things running. Just really a great tool. I enjoy this thing all the time. It has just been tremendous, and it's going to get better as time goes on. This is remotely. This is a really valuable tool when you're talking about business and supporting users or clients or anybody else. I think this is something that you would want to have. Whether you're even trying to access other machines in a remote way or just to use it as a tool for running your business, completely up to you, but just really a great tool. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.